everyone, thank you for coming to today's educational session. It's entitled Diabetes Knows No Boundaries, Exploring Diabetes Management in Filipino Food and Culture. Before we begin, I would like to review the agenda, and we will start with the introduction of the speaker. We'll review the learning objectives. We'll have opening activities and a self-assessment session. We'll explore the benefits of change, review food and blood sugar, meal planning, goal setting, and then at the end we'll have time for questions, and then I will also share some resources that I have available for you to use when you're at home. A little bit about me. My name is Courtney, and I am a registered dietitian. I have a Bachelor of Science in Dietetics from Point Loma Nazarene and a graduate certificate in dietetics from San Francisco State, which is also where I did my dietetic internship. I am currently working on my Master's of Science in Applied Nutrition at the University of New England online. I work full-time as a dietitian in the skilled nursing setting and in a retirement community. Some of my interests include diabetes care, cooking and baking, and I also enjoy going to the beach and on hikes and traveling with family and friends. Okay, so as far as our objectives for today, by the end of this session, you will be able to list reasons for changing habits in relation to diabetes care, identify foods that affect blood sugar levels, and develop meal plans that fit diabetes meal patterns. Before we get into the educational part of this, I would like to begin with an opening activity or two. So as you can see at your tables, you have a handout that has the title 24-Hour Dietary Recall, and then another handout that is entitled My Plate Activity. On the first handout, it is the recall, which will ask you to list the foods that you ate yesterday, including drinks, and you can list them however you ate them or just in a list of as you remember the foods. If you're able to, it is helpful to list the amounts that you ate the foods and drink in as well. For example, if you had some rice about the size of your palm, then that would be helpful to write next to where you have written rice. At the end of the dietary recall, review the foods that you have eaten throughout the day yesterday, and then find and write the food that you see that you have eaten most frequently or most often throughout the day. If you finish early, you can also list a few of your favorite cooking methods that you like to use at home when you prepare foods. Or if you do prepare foods. The second handout is a My Plate activity, and you'll be asked to select one of the meals that you ate yesterday, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or a snack, and then list those foods into the corresponding section of this plate. For instance, in the protein, if you had eggs for breakfast, then you can put the eggs in the protein section. We'll take a few minutes to do this, and then we'll review our activities. So now that we've taken time to assess what we eat in a day, I want to ask, why is change important, and what do you see as benefits of changing habits in relation to diabetes care? We'll take a few moments to discuss this at our tables, and then if you'd like, you can write your answer on the flip chart that you are provided, and then we will share out in a few minutes. Now that we've shared some of our benefits to change, I have also listed a few other benefits to discuss, which include avoiding complications such as heart disease, blindness, kidney disease, nerve disease, as well as reduced healthcare costs, because in 2017, diabetes caused at least $327 billion worth of health expenditure, and also $352 million Americans are at risk of developing diabetes. Were at risk of developing diabetes in 2017. So this is a health concern that we should look a little bit further into. A few more numbers that I have for you. So the direct medical expenses, as we saw a little bit earlier, for the United States was $116 billion spent, and then that money spent on diabetes care increased in 2012 to $245 billion spent. So the numbers here are a little bit outdated, but the bottom line is that the healthcare expenses for the people with diabetes are actually 2 times higher than for those people who do not have diabetes. So let's take a moment again and revisit our flip charts. If you can take 1 or 2 minutes individually and write down a couple of words that you associate with diabetes. And then, if you feel comfortable, we will share those out as a class. So, I appreciate your participation in this discussion, and we will continue talking about what diabetes is further. So, in normal digestion, we'll review what happens to glucose, which is the body's main preferred source of energy. So, all foods are broken down into little molecules called sugar, or glucose, which is sugar, and it's the body's preferred source of energy. So after you eat and you chew your food and swallow, and it goes down through your organs to your stomach, it's all broken up and digested into smaller parts, down into glucose. And the pancreas, which is another organ, releases a hormone called insulin, and this insulin tells the body to take the glucose that was broken down and in your bloodstream and take it into the cells so that your body cells have a source of energy. Now, in a diabetic response, the same chewing and digesting process occurs, and the food is broken down into glucose, and the pancreas, again the organ, releases the hormone insulin, except this time the body does not respond to insulin, and the blood sugars that were broken down from the sugars that were broken down from the food continue to circulate throughout your body through your bloodstream. And because the body does not uptake the glucose, then the pancreas produces even more of that insulin hormone. And the body still does not respond to the insulin telling the body to take the sugar from the bloodstream to your cells, and the sugars continue to circulate through the bloodstream throughout your body. This causes a high blood sugar level, and with consistently or continuously high blood sugar levels, then the pancreas continues to produce that insulin, but it becomes exhausted because it produces a lot of insulin, the hormone, and there is no response to that insulin. A few more numbers. In 2015, almost 31 million Americans had diabetes, which includes type 1 and type 2, and about 84 million Americans also had prediabetes, which is the stage before type 2 diabetes. And of those, Asian Americans produced one of the highest amount of those adults with diabetes diagnosis, of 8% of adults. And of that 8%, there was 8.9% of Filipino Americans with a diabetes diagnosis. And this is important to consider because not all of the diabetes or people with diabetes know they have diabetes, and diabetes was actually the cause of 4 million deaths in 2017. I just reviewed this, that diabetes caused about 4 million deaths in 2017, and it still is the 7th leading cause of death in the United States. So whatever stage that you are on today, it is just important to consider the overall health of yourself, and not just focus on what you can and cannot do. But it's looking to the future and thinking about what you would like your life to look like. Health is just one component of that helps you or enables you to achieve all your goals and dreams. Okay, so now that we have discussed what diabetes is, we will take a look at the review of food and its effect on blood sugar. So we'll return to our flip charts, and if you know what some effects of different foods are on blood sugars, or what foods cause blood sugar to be really high in your body, then you can go ahead and write those down on your flip chart, and then we will come back together to review those. Again, if you feel comfortable and if you think that you know, you are more than welcome to contribute. Thank you all for those who have shared your answers. And just before we get into the management of food and diabetes, we'll just take one more look at the importance of balancing sugar in your body. So one good reason to keep your blood sugar under control is to avoid complications that I had mentioned earlier, including heart disease and kidney disease, and then just having energy for your daily activities. When your blood sugar is too high or too low, then you may not have enough energy to take on the work that you have for the day. And then again, as I just mentioned, your overall health, even though you may not feel when your sugar is high or when your sugar is too low, then there are still changes that are happening in your body, like your pancreas, that organ that produces insulin, becoming exhausted, or nerve pain. So these are just a few reasons why it is important to balance blood sugar. So moving on, we'll talk a little bit about the dietary management of diabetes. So we'll review the basics, and if you are familiar with some of these terms, please feel free to raise your hand and share an answer. So for the basics, there are 3 main nutrient groups that we usually categorize foods into, and those are fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. Now, if you guess that carbohydrates are the ones that cause a greater effect of changing blood sugar levels in your body, then you are correct. Carbohydrates have a greater effect on blood sugar than fats and proteins do. So because carbohydrates are the ones that affect blood sugar the most, we'll focus on what kinds of carbohydrates we have. So they are usually classified into starches, which are complex carbohydrates, and sugars, which are simple carbohydrates. Then we also have a separate category for fiber, because this fiber category does not impact, the body does not process the fiber the same way as a simple carbohydrate or a complex carbohydrate. Simple carbohydrates are the ones that we like to focus on the most, because they are the ones that are broken down quickly and used quickly for energy in the body system.